Good evening and welcome to In Focus. Tonight, our focus is Davos and Egypt's message to the world. As the World Economic Forum opens under the theme A Spirit of Dialogue, Egypt is positioning itself as a stability anchor and an investment destination in a region under pressure. President Fattah al-Sisi is expected to deliver a special address and hold high-level meetings on the sidelines with economic priorities, regional diplomacy and strategic partnerships all on the table. The question is what Egypt wants to achieve in Davos this year and what the country can realistically secure from investor confidence to political traction on the region's toughest files. I'm Rana Al-Khassas and this is In Focus, where we cut through the noise and stay with what really shifts the story. Egypt is taking part in the World Economic Forum in Davos, with President Fattah al-Sisi scheduled to deliver a special address and hold high-level meetings, including talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. The presidency reported Davos runs from January the 19th to the 23rd under the theme A Spirit of Dialogue, as leaders focus on geopolitics, trade uncertainty, energy security, and the AI race shaping growth and jobs. Egypt's presidency says President Fattah al-Sisi will meet President Trump on the sidelines in a discussion expected to cover regional stability, the Gaza file, and wider cooperation alongside renewed U.S. signals on mediating the Nile Dam dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia. The World Economic Forum program lists a special address by al-Sisi on January the 21st, placing Egypt's message on investment, resilience, and regional diplomacy at the center of a week where global leaders are openly debating whether dialogue can still hold while rivalry keeps rising. And to further unpack the situation, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist. Welcome to Qnews, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Sir, what are the most concrete outcomes Egypt can realistically secure from Davos? Deals, financing, or policy partnerships, and how do we measure success?
Again, thank you for having me, Rana. Always a pleasure to be with you. Of course, this is President al-Sisi's second participation in the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland. His last participation was back in 2015 when Egypt was beginning its developmental leap forward and was seeking a lot of foreign investment, and this is what Egypt has achieved over the past 10 years. However, this time, President al-Sisi participates in Davos in substantially different circumstances, at a time where the region is facing existential threats, existential security challenges, existential political challenges, geopolitical challenges as well, with countries like Israel, for example, aspiring for expansionism on the expense of the sovereignty of other states in the region. And of course, the region has been consumed by acts of unilateralism lately that contravene international law. So President al-Sisi goes to Davos in order to to be one of the reasonable voices out of the regional heavyweights of the Middle East that will advocate for regional stability and for common cooperation and dialogue for global security at this point. We know that the Middle East will be one of the pressing issues that will be discussed during the Davos Forum this year. It is one of the main areas of focus due to its geopolitical implications and its economic implications as well on the global economy and on international trade. So Egypt, of course, with its centrality in the region, it intersects with many of those fires. It intersects with Gaza, it intersects with the security of the Red Sea, security of international waterways in the region like the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. So I think Egypt will be focusing on that, and President al-Sisi will focus on that, also on his upcoming bilateral meeting with President Trump. Egypt also will naturally work on attempting to attract more investments in this global forum that witnesses the participation of all of the business tycoons of the world from various sectors. Egypt has a growing and an attractive economy that is susceptible to attracting even more FDIs at this point, and Egypt will certainly try to take advantage of President al-Sisi's participation in the economic forum in order to achieve as much as possible.
Dr. Osman, how do you read President Fattah al-Sisi's meetings during the Davos, of course, convention from your own perspective and point of view? And I know it's an early question, but still, I think Egypt weighs a lot in the region and is in the middle of course, as you mentioned, geopolitical, everything that's taking place in the region. What's going on, Israel's pressure on everything. How do you read his participation, and how do you read what's going to take place?
President al-Sisi,
and his meeting, of course, on top of all, with U.S. President Donald Trump.
I think the main focus of the Egyptian president's participation at Davos this year is his meeting with President Trump. Not only because this will only they both will speak about and discuss the bilateral relations, strategic partnership between both countries, but also because they will discuss issues of common interest, issues that both the United States and Egypt are heavily involved in. Let's not forget, Rama, that President Trump is supposed to announce the launch of his Board of Peace in Davos on Thursday, and Egypt has been invited to become a member. The Egyptian President al-Sisi, has been invited to be a member of this board, along with about 58 other countries that were invited. And also Egypt and the Board of Peace, of course, will be the overarching entity that will supervise the implementation of the Gaza Agreement, along with the Executive Council and with the Palestinian National Committee in Gaza. So President al-Sisi, and of course Egypt played a central role of all of this. Egypt played a central role even in reaching these understandings and this agreement on Gaza. So President al-Sisi will have a lot to discuss with President Trump about the implementation of the Trump plan in Gaza, the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, and also about the implementation specifically of phase 2 of the agreement. Israel has been laying obstructions and hurdles along the way over the past 3 months that has prevented the implementation of key provisions of the Trump plan. However, now I think that since the U.S. is much more interested now in the activation and implementation of the second phase and taking active steps, actual steps, executive steps on the ground in that direction, I think that President al-Sisi will be very interested in trying to push the United States in that direction through his discussions with President Donald Trump. Also, one of the other pressing issues that I think that will be on the top of the agenda is the situation in Sudan. Both Egypt and the United States, along with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, constitute the quartet, which is responsible for the mediation between the warring parties in Sudan. Egypt is very interested in ending the war in Sudan and in starting a political process that will end the civil war over there. The United States can play a pivotal role in actuating this and making it happen on the ground and realizing this on the ground. So I think President al-Sisi will push in that direction. And definitely the issue of the Nile waters and the illegal dam that was built by Ethiopia, the Renaissance Dam, over the past years, will be a subject of discussion. President Trump once again offered to attempt to mediate a deal between Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt now has welcomed the U.S. initiative in principle. However, they will need to discuss it even further and discuss whether Ethiopia is ready to positively interact with this American initiative or not.
Sir, from an investor's lenses, which free forms or signals would most improve confidence in Egypt? Currency stability, inflation, or the business climate?
I think that the Egyptian economy has substantially improved over the past couple of years. The inflation has declined substantially. Foreign currency is accessible and is present in Egyptian banks. Egypt's dollar income has increased as of late due to the increase in remittances, the boom in the tourism industry as of late, especially after the opening and the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum, and also the Suez Canal after the war ended in Gaza and the Houthis halted the disruption of maritime navigation in the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. Traffic has returned to the Suez Canal, so basically it has become one of the prime sources of income to Egypt. And Egypt also has attracted multiple investments from various sources over the years. Europe has, the European countries have invested substantially in the Egyptian economy. Fellow Arab Gulf states have invested substantially in the Egyptian economy. China and India and Russia also have invested in certain major sectors in the Egyptian economy. So Egypt is attracting a lot of investments, and definitely the Egyptian market is ripe for more and more FDIs in the very near future.
It's also, we can say that Egypt has become or is becoming a main hub attraction for investments.
Definitely.
How does Egypt's regional diplomatic role, especially on Gaza and Red Sea security, translate into economic value or lower risk premiums, sir?
Of course, this stability in the Middle East is tied directly to the economic welfare of Egypt and the region. In the latest wave of hostilities in the war in Gaza, which spilled over into Lebanon and eventually even into Iran, we have seen how when the region was set on fire basically over the past 2 years, it substantially affected the global economy, not only the region's economy due to the disruption of maritime traffic and international trade routes that pass through the region, and also due to increases in energy prices during the war with Iran. So basically, any instability in the region does not serve the global economy, and any instability in the region also harms naturally the economies of the countries in the region. So I think Egypt is advocating for that. Egypt, for example, is opposing Israel's moves in the Horn of Africa in coordination with countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries under the umbrella of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, because they know that the Israeli designs in supporting the or investing in the partition and the dismemberment, basically, of an Arab country like Somalia, for example, will have its very, very negative ramifications on the security of the southern Red Sea region, which is one of the prime passageways of international trade, for example. So Egyptian diplomacy and Egypt's foreign policy agenda seeks to preserve the unity of countries, seeks to secure international trade routes, and seeks to uphold international law. And all of this, of course, serves for a more stable international economy.
Sir, what sectors are most Davos ready for Egypt right now? Renewables and green hydrogen, logistics and ports, manufacturing, ICT, tourism, and why?
I think that some of those sectors already are booming in Egypt. The tourism sector is booming and is ripe for more investment.
Which sector is booming, sorry, sir?
The tourism industry, for example. And Egypt also has invested substantially in the production of green hydrogen and in the investment in clean energy in general. Egypt's energy markets also are very ripe for investment, especially in the gas and oil sectors. Many untapped natural resources that can be explored and can attract major investments. So we have a multitude of sectors in the Egyptian economy that can attract even more FDIs. Egypt has about over 150 or 160 $billion of FDI stocks, and I think this figure can be multiplied over the years if the marketing is done in the correct way.
How important is Egypt's Suez Canal and transport hub narrative at a time of shifting shipping routes, and what needs to happen to sustain a recovery, sir?
12% of the world's trade passes through the Suez Canal, and also 22% of the tanker oil tanker trade or the tanker trade passes through the Suez Canal. So it is an instrumental international waterway that has to be safeguarded. And any instability in the region, especially in the Bab el-Mandeb Straits in Yemen or in Somalia or any these parts of the Horn of Africa or the Southern Arabian Peninsula, definitely adversely affect stability and the security and the freedom of navigation in this area. Egypt is more than able to protect the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is safe for maritime navigation. However, there are certain other areas that are connected to the Suez Canal, like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, for example, and the entrance area of the Red Sea. It has been adversely affected by the latest wave of conflict in the Middle East. So basically, it's all interconnected, Rana. At the end of the day, the Suez Canal cannot be secured without securing the Red Sea and without securing the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Horn of Africa. And this is why Egypt is moving very assertively in that direction in order to preserve stability and block all attempts of acquiring unilateral hegemony in that part of the world, especially on the part of Israel, of course.
Dr. Egypt often pitches itself as a bridge between Africa and the Arab world and Europe. What particular initiatives could make that positioning more credible over the next 12 months, although I see it credible, sir?
Egypt, of course, is already a hub in several aspects when it comes to the region. Egypt, of course, is one of the most stable countries in the region. Egypt is also a regional power that enjoys the respect and the admiration of most of its regional partners and enjoys the trust and confidence of all of the regional stakeholders. Egypt also is invested in Arab-Arab cooperation and cementing Arab-Arab mechanisms at this point. And the same, of course, goes for Egypt's relationship with Africa. Economically, of course, Egypt is turning into an energy hub at this point, becoming one of the, especially in the field of natural gas. Egypt is now one of the main suppliers of energy. It's becoming one of the main suppliers of energy to countries like Lebanon and Syria at this point. So Egypt basically now is playing a very major role to attract more investment and to also be one of the pillars of stability in this region.
So we end up, Dr. Mohammed Osman, by that Egypt is, of course, alluring to attracting more investments because of the safety and security in Egypt and stability on top of all, and that Egypt has played major roles in major situations and, of course, in major crises that took place in the region in the recent year, of course, in the past year at least. How do you read it? Okay, Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist, thank you very much for joining us on Qnews. And Ambassador John Simon, Managing Partner, Total Impact Capital. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting is underway in Davos, with leaders focusing on geopolitics, artificial intelligence, and the global economy, as warnings grow that the world is shifting toward power politics and away from shared rules. Davos 2026 is convening government leaders and CEOs around the theme, a spirit of dialogue, but the tone is far from calm. French President Emmanuel Macron warned of a shift towards a world with fewer rules and rising imperial ambitions, while business leaders argued the legitimacy of the global economic model is under pressure and that AI will test whether growth benefits societies beyond the top tier. The agenda is broad, from trade and supply chains to energy security and climate transition, but the underlying tension is the same: how to keep markets and alliances functioning in an era of sharper competition and political distrust. The week is expected to include high-level meetings between global business and U.S. officials as investors watch for signals on tariffs, interest rates, and the future direction of U.S. policy. For further analysis, we're joined from Beijing by Dr. Marvin Lee, a PhD researcher of the University of Manchester. Welcome, sir, to Qnews, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us. Sir, Davos is framed as a spirit of dialogue, but leaders are warning the world is drifting away from rules. Is this year about rebuilding trust or about managing decline in the multilateral order?
Assalamualaikum. Shukran li istidafati. Barakallahu fik. From the Chinese perspective, this is not about managing a decline, but about transforming the multilateral order into something more representative. We believe the rule-based order should not be defined by a small circle of nations, especially from the global north, but by the United Nations Charter and true multilateralism. Rebuilding trust requires moving away from the Cold War mentality and the so-called small yachts and high fence. As Vice Premier He Lifeng emphasized at this summit, China views dialogue as the only way to ensure the global economy remains open and inclusive rather than fragmented into confrontational blocks. So from the Chinese standpoint, we welcome all kinds of collaboration and investment rather than confrontations, like some countries across in this world.
Okay, sir. Again, the world is drifting away from rules. I want to know your narrative and your point of view in this. And is this year about rebuilding trust again? If, of course, a lot of skirmishes took place and a lot of issues took place between countries like the United States and China. And is it a year about rebuilding trust or about managing decline in the multilateral order?
This is a very good question. I'm a little bit pessimistic about the rebuilding trust among countries.
Why, sir, are you pessimistic?
From the Chinese standpoint, we can see that some countries from the global north would like to dominate everything in the world, would like to gain more discursive power. But the Chinese people and the Chinese civilization would like to collaborate with foreign countries, especially Canada, France, UK, Southeast Asia, everywhere in the world. Because from our old wisdom, we say that no matter we welcome you no matter where you come from. Even though we have different standpoint, we have different belief or ideas, because of our culture and traditions or national interests. So that's why.
Do you mean, sir, to say other countries away from the United States?
We can see that some countries would like to be friends with China as a leverage to have more negotiation power, bargaining power with the USA.
AI is everywhere in Davos conversations. What is the real risk leaders are worried about? Jobs and inequality, safety and misuse, or strategic dominance between major powers, sir?
This is a very good question. While safety and jobs are very important here for this conference, the most pressing risk from our perspective is the digital divide and the potential for a monopoly on AI governance. We advocate for AI for good. The real danger is that AI becomes a tool for strategic dominance and decoupling rather than a shared driver for high quality development. So China's global AI governance that I was in Shenzhen and Hangzhou a month ago, I can see that China is really ambitious and very optimistic to different the entire global AI governance, for example, in terms of safeties, collaborations, everything.
Sir, could you elaborate more on when you said monopoly on AI governments, which governments, and what type of monopoly is going to take place in these countries?
We can see that there has been a second Cold War between China and USA comprehensively, from AI to space to sports to soft power. And USA.
So you mean China and the United States?
Both countries. So while USA has is trying to dominate the AI field. China is working hard not just to catch up, to be more innovative. From the robot to the AI, you can see the DeepSeek moment, like back in last year. We can see that China is collaborative, while the US would like to dominate from one single hand to have more upper hand position, rather than collaborate with other countries.
Markets want clarity on trade and tariffs. Do you expect Davos to produce real policy direction or just messaging that leaves businesses planning for worst case scenarios, sir?
Davos conference is just like a casual platform for the global economy. So while it may not produce a signed treaty among countries, the messaging here is critical for market confidence. China has come to Davos to send a clear signal of opening up with other countries. Back in last year, in 2025, China's foreign trade reached a record of nearly 6.5 trillion USD. And our goal is to counter the worst case protectionist narrative with a commitment to stable supply chains and the removal of investment barriers. We hope Davos produce a consensus that trade wars have no winners.
Sir, energy security is back as a national security file. What is the biggest 2026 pressure point? Grid capacity, critical minerals, LNG politics, or the cost of the transition?
I really like this question. The biggest pressure point is the cost and equity of the transition. We cannot achieve climate goals if green technology is always weaponized. China is a leader in renewable energy, from solar panel to EV cars like BYD and Xiaomi, and we view this as global public goods. So if certain regions use national security as a pretext for tariff on green technology, it raised the cost of the transition for everyone on this planet. And true energy security comes from diversified cooperative supply chains and not from critical minerals or localized energy islands.
Sir, we keep hearing about capitalism must evolve. What does that mean in practical policy terms? Taxation, competition policy, AI regulation, worker retraining, or stronger social protection? Plus, another question I want to ask you is that AI, sir, supposed to be one of the most important technologies that is taking place in the world today. As we talk, is the rate of unemployment going to increase or decrease? And what's going to happen to the employers in the countries, whether it's China or monopoly countries or all over the world?
I really like your question here. I can share my own experience here. I was traveling to China a month ago, from Shanghai, Hangzhou, Yiwu, Shenzhen, especially Shenzhen and Hangzhou, the most innovative cities across China. And what I have seen is they have been researching, they have been putting lots of effort on R&D in terms of AI, robots, drone technologies, and everything. And I can see that my country, China, is going to build an AI-driven society, whereas US is going to build an AI with a heroic approach. So like, for example, ChatGPT, Gemini is all about heroic, like a single figurehead. But China is going to adopt AI to everywhere, every corner of our lives in China. We have the smart cities, the order, the everything, and use AI to support our lives. So some people in the world keep saying that they have a very pessimistic point of view about AI. AI will take away their jobs. AI will dominate the world. Why don't we think in different way? So that's why China is going to build another solution, another way. Yes, we can do something like this. Use AI to power our society. Use AI to leverage and even to improve our society. This is what China is doing for the.
What will human beings do, sir? Please elaborate more. Let us understand, because everybody is worried, of course.
Let me share some historical lessons with you. So
But
back
in
in
10 seconds, please, because I have to wrap up because I'm out of time.
Sure. One sentence here. We have to be more optimistic and use AI to adopt into our lives rather than just to avoid it.
So human beings are going to be involved, and they're going to be the rates of they're going to be employment rates, and then nothing is going to happen to employment rates, sir.
From the Chinese perspective, we need to adopt AI technology to our lives, from our daily lives to our professional levels. So we cannot avoid it, and the development of AI is inevitable in the future, in the foreseeable future.
From Beijing, that was Mr. Marvin Lee, PhD researcher of the University of Manchester. Thank you so much for joining us here on Qnews, sir. And tonight, the key takeaway is that Davos is not just about speeches, it is about outcomes. Egypt's participation is a chance to convert presence into partnerships and diplomacy into deliverables. Whether on investment, growth, or regional stability, the real measure will be what follows after the cameras, commitments that translate into projects, and dialogue that translates into progress. I'm Rana Al-Khassas. Thank you very much for watching In Focus. Good night.